Welcome to the October monthly event for the Silicon Valley Product Management Association. My name is Debashish Niyogi. I'm a board member at SVPMA. For those of you who are new to SVPMA, we are a 25-year-old volunteer-driven nonprofit organization that serves product management and product marketing community in the San Francisco Bay Area and beyond. Among other things, we offer monthly meetings such as the one that you're in now. And we have distinguished speakers talk to us about topics that are of relevance to product managers and people in related roles. Look out for announcements on our website. They should be coming real soon, svpma.org. I'm very pleased to introduce tonight's speaker, Ron Lichty. Ron has been a distinguished member of the SVPMA community for many years, and he has spoken at our events several times in the past. He has over 30 years of experience in leading product and development teams at organizations such as Apple, Charles Schwab, and Stanford. And he has also authored a book on managing software teams. And you can see the cover of that book right behind Ron's, right next to Ron, right there. Yep. He's currently a consultant and advises tech executives. He's currently a consultant and advises tech executives on how to effectively manage software and product teams. Today, he will talk to us about how to inspire and motivate your teams to deliver exceptional user experience. There will also be a Q&A period after the talk. So take it away, Ron.
Okay, so we're going to talk about a couple of things that are dear to me. So my passion is making software development hum. And I'm totally a fan of exceptional user experience. And so that's what we're going to discuss tonight. And I want to start by bringing up this chart. And I'm gonna come back to this chart a couple of times. But I want to, but this is a chart that we published in our book. This one, it's hard to point at things in the window that's really not behind you, but it's part of our book, Managing the Unmanageable: Rules, Tools, and Insights for Managing Software People and Teams. So Mickey Mental and I spent 8 years writing this, and one of the chapters is a chapter on motivating programmers. And if you can see the subhead, it says motivational theories, and they're really management theories that include motivational elements. And we spent the first dozen pages. We opened this chapter with dealing with motivational theories, not Taylorism. So every once in a while, I run into a software development organization that's still being run in a Taylorism kind of way. That is, managers telling everyone else what to do and not listening and not sharing and not collaborating and not doing fundamentally what managers should be doing, which is supporting their organizations, not squashing them down. So I'm not going to talk about Taylorism. But there were 3 management theorists who came along in the 1950s, and I want to talk about one of them because that chart began with one of these 3 people, Frederick Hertzberg. So Frederick Hertzberg's insight in the 1950s, and he published a book in 1959, and then wrote he actually published a couple of books on his insight. And then did a paper for Harvard Business Review. You may be aware that Harvard Business Review sells reprints of its articles. Hertzberg's article, the reprints of Hertzberg's article have sold more copies than any other article that HBR has ever published. His insight being that there are not just motivators, but there are also demotivators. Or we can put it a different way, there are foundational factors that have to be in place in order to motivate people. And so he wasn't speaking specifically about programmers. he was sort of speaking about everybody, all workers of all kinds. But basically, he said there are foundational factors that have to be in place first, and if they're not there, then they become demotivators, and they prevent managers, they prevent leaders from motivating their organizations. So that's what this chart is about. And this chart is about both the motivators and demotivators. So the blue bars are the motivators, and this chart is organized by the motivators. But the red ones are demotivators, and I want to, or the foundational factors. And I want to talk about those first because they're so important that we can't motivate our organizations without having them in place. So what foundational factors must be in place? And these are the red bars, and that top red bar is respect-worthy managers. So we have to be people who our folks respect. We have to be people who they look up to, who they believe in, who they trust. Secondly, we need to have organizations that have joy in them, we need happy teams. We need environments that organizations and team members can have fun in, but can truly feel joy from the work that they do. Third, we have to have workplaces that support learning and growing. Hopefully all of your organizations support learning and growing, and support learning and growing in sort of multiple ways. We want to learn and grow our technical skills as developers, those of us who are developers, but we also want to learn and grow our understanding of the business and our understanding of customers. Then we want acceptable working conditions have to be in place, or we can't motivate our organizations. And it becomes a demotivator if, for example, we find ourselves having to work with tools that are unacceptable, that are inadequate, that I run into organizations from time to time that the developers are actually using workstations that are less powerful than the CEOs or the head of product. Not a good idea. We need the people who are generating the stuff to have the most powerful platforms that we can give them. We need reasonable company policies and administration. And I think this one's really illustrative of the difference between motivators and demotivators. So I've never met a person who said, oh yeah, I joined this company because it has great company policies and administration. I bet none of you have met a person who said that either. But I also bet that you know people who have left companies for unreasonable company policies and administration. And finally, there are more on that chart, but these are the top 6. Finally, management that's ethical. So they're looking for ethical management. In order for us to be able to motivate our organizations, we need these things in place. That brings us around then to what motivates software developers, and that left bar, that highest blue bar, is making a difference in the world. So making a difference in the world. So I started my career as a programmer. This was back. This picture was taken after I'd been a programmer for a couple of years, but I was self-taught as a programmer, and my motivation originally in learning programming was I wanted to create stuff that I could delight my wife and my kids and my friends with. And then I got a job as a programmer, and to give you an example, I was part of a team that created one of the very first hotel plastic key card hotel locking systems. And our persona that we as a team came up with for that key card locking system, hotel locking system, was we wanted a locking system that was so trustworthy that it would protect one of the person we picked it as a persona, one of the most, uh, at the time in the 80s, one of the most well-known people in the world, former First Lady of the United States, Jackie Kennedy, now Jackie Kennedy Onassis. And I can tell you, we were very highly motivated by creating that persona for our hotel locking system. Now I got to, for 7 years, I got to do a lot of different kinds of programming. And then at the end of 7 years, I was interested in managing. And so I want to walk you a little bit through my history because I want to come to the second. So that chart was sort of the first driver for this talk. I want to get you to the second driver for this talk. So I was first a programmer for 7 years. Then I started being a manager. I moved to management, but when Apple Computer recruited me to create a product management group for development tools inside of Apple. And so my first management role was actually creating and managing a group of product managers for Apple's development tools. I spent 2 years doing product management and then said, you folks who do product management are especially talented, but I like talking tech to engineers more than I get to do as a product manager. I'm going to go back to go back to programming. They kept making me a manager of programmers. So that's what I ended up doing for another 5 years at Apple. And then I moved on to director and VP of engineering roles as I got promoted through some very large companies and some very small ones. And in about 2009, I was looking back over my career. I was considering doing a pivot to consulting. And I was looking back over my career and realizing that almost to a one, all of those companies since Apple had hired me to untangle the knots in development of product teams. That somehow I had some kind of spidey sense for seeing what was missing. And so I'm about to get to why I want to talk about motivating teams to deliver exceptional user experience here. So I did make that pivot. And my consulting practice is sort of two parts. One of them is parachuting in as an interim VP of engineering until the company can hire the VP of engineering that they need full time. And the other is coming in and assessing product and development organizations for basically what's missing, untangling the knots. What can the existing management do to make their software development hum? And one of the things that I've come to see in doing those assessments pretty much over and over is that while leadership often is obsessed with purpose and impact, the teams actually haven't gotten that message. Making a difference in the world is that number one motivator. And what's been all too common as I've come in and assessed organizations is that I've gone in and I've interviewed the leaders of the organization, from CEOs to heads of product and heads of engineering, and all of them, 201, they all say, oh yes, our teams and developers understand the mission. They understand the company's mission, they understand the product's mission, they understand the product vision. And then I talk to developers who say, why am I working on what I'm working on? Why will my ticket make a difference? Over and over, I've had this experience. And so what's the disconnect? And I think the disconnect is that leadership too often. So if you go talk to salespeople, so when I go to talk to salespeople or I go read literature about making sales, they all have some number. It's the number of times they have to make the point before they make the sale. And some people will have and some of those sales leaders will have a number of 7, and some will have a number of 13. I've heard the number 9, and somebody else will say 17, but they've all got a number, and it's always greater than 1. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen one less than 7. You've got to make the point multiple times in order to make the sale. And what I think happens is that leadership makes the point once and says, our team now knows what our mission is. Our team now knows why we're making this product, and our team knows that can by osmosis know that every single thing they work on is contributing to that larger mission. And it doesn't seem to be the case. So we almost titled this talk, Make Your Mission a Mantra. As Devashish and I were talking about what we should title this talk as, this came up. I want to make a couple more points than this, but this is the big one. Making your mission a mantra. Making sure that multiple times you share context and goals and strategy and rationale. That we lock in clear company strategy and product strategy with measurable outcomes before there's even a solution. We know what we're trying to create before we solution it. And that engineers need to see and understand their opportunity for impact. And that comes in multiple places. So I suspect the beginning. So chartering is a beginning kind of exercise. I don't see enough companies doing chartering, and so I encourage you to take a day at the beginning of a project or 2 days, and have chartering sessions with the entire team that's going to be working on something, the entire organization that's going to be working on something. But I suspect that at the beginning, leaders have made some kind of statement. Well, actually, I've run into organizations that just simply hand off. Back in the waterfall days, I ran into organizations that simply handed off 100 or occasionally 1,000 pages PRDs to their developers and say, this is what we're doing, without a hell of a lot of context. So chartering is an opportunity to talk about all of those things, context, goal, strategy, and rationale at the beginning. Chartering is important, but we also have the opportunity, if we're working in Scrum or we're working in some form of Agile, iterations are called sprints. And so I've got sprint goal here because more organizations use the Scrum terminology than anything else. But I too often see sprints come along that are just an amalgamation of a bunch of tasks, sometimes not even a bunch of stories. But hopefully they at least have a bunch of stories that have outcomes that are about, actually, we'll talk about stories in a minute. So the sprint goal for the next week or the next 2 weeks or the next 3 weeks, however long your sprints are, this is the kind of change we're trying to make that's going to make a difference for our users. So a sprint goal is an opportunity to make our mission a mantra. And then that sprint is made up of a whole bunch of tasks and hopefully stories that are divided into tasks. And those stories have reason. I'm going to talk about that. As I said, I'm going to talk about stories more in a minute. But every story and every task, every developer who's working on one of those should have a direct understanding of the connection between that work and the big picture, the impact that they can have. And then there's sprint demos, the opportunity and I've seen sprint demos done in 2 ways, but at the end of a sprint, we want either developers to be demonstrating the work that they have completed, meets the definition of done, is completed, and they're demoing it to the whole company and maybe even to customers, if any of you have read Rich Sheridan's book or attended a lecture by Rich Sheridan talking about his company in Ann Arbor, they actually have their customers demo the finished work back to the whole team. So developers get to see how users are actually using their stuff as they pick it up. And as Rich points out, more often than not, there are surprises for how users actually pick up the work that we do. And those surprises are really valuable to understanding what it is that they really want, what their real understanding is. And then finally, taking your developers along to see users and making sure that there's a connection, that it's not just a game of telephone from users and customers through product managers to developers, but the developers are actually collaborating and seeing customers as well. So making your mission a mantra requires connecting the dots over and over between the work that every developer is assigned with, is self-assigned, and the tangible ways that that work is going to impact users. So I think the opening line in the invitation to this talk was, do you want your developers coding tickets or creating outstanding customer delight? They have to understand how to delight customers in order to delight customers. So take your developers along. Have your customers do the sprint demos. Round robin, taking developers along for all of the work that you do in coming to an understanding of customers and customer needs, and actually, so I have this huge appreciation for product managers, more talented than I think I was as a product manager, in being able to not just hear what users say they want, but to connote what it is that they actually want from what they say. And that translation can often be helped by developers seeing it and having the collaboration around that as well. Make developers your partners in delighting users, in delighting customers, in identifying that magic. As Henry Ford was a hypocrite, as he supposedly said, if I'd asked my users what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. Great. So we hear a faster horse. Now, what can we translate that into the results in a car? As Steve Jobs did say, his users never would have asked for a Macintosh. They probably would have asked for a faster MS-DOS or a more intuitive MS-DOS or a less frustrating MS-DOS, but they never would have asked for a Macintosh unless they had been one of the few people who were using the Xerox Star up until that point. So I talked to a developer who was in an organization that enabled developers to see users using their stuff, who said, we had tech that not only let us watch them use the app, but actually see their face, their expressions. As a developer, you see stuff you wouldn't expect. It was so enlightening to me as a developer. So user stories, this is the canonical user story format. As some kind of user, I want some kind of functionality so that something. Why do I want that functionality? And what traditional waterfall PRDs delivered was just the functionality. Just do this, do this, do this, do this. It never had the user, it never had the why. And the why is so important well, Bruce Wong said, always start with why. Engineers are problem solvers. Starting with why both frames the conversation and arms engineers with data. And here's Martin Fowler, who said, building software off just a list of requirements misses out a lot of business context. Developers are told what to do without being told why it's important. The why often makes a big difference in doing the what properly. So a bit more about getting that user experience. So I'm going to move on from bringing your developers along and from making your mission a mantra to a few more things. Prioritize relentlessly so that we deliver the right things. I think one of the should back up and say that my consulting practice, I also train teams in Agile. And I've delivered something like 175 Agile trainings over the last dozen years. And I think one of the uh, true innovations in Agile is the ordered backlog. That backlog is ordered based on what's going to deliver the most value to our customers. And so and the backlog gives us a chance, and it's in order. There are no two top things in a backlog. There's only one top thing in the backlog. I actually dug into the source of the word priority at one point, and until roughly the 1940s, the word priority meant one thing. There's one and only one priority. There are not a list of priorities. There's not two priorities. There's no ordered priorities. There's a priority actually literally meant one thing. What's our priority? And only in the 1940s did it get morphed into what it tends to mean today. But what we want is that ordered backlog so that developers, when they come to the backlog, can look at the top thing in the backlog and know that that's the thing that's going to deliver the most value to our customers and to our business. It enables developer focus. Small stories. So that backlog, everything at the top of that backlog are small stories that we can finish in a single sprint so that we can show visible progress at the end of the sprint. And the team can have that satisfaction of showing visible progress at the end of every sprint. Bringing context. Product managers and product owners bringing context. So bringing business drivers and priorities and politics and sales numbers and competitive landscape are all valuable for development teams to know. And then there are three more that are just awesomely important. Customer wins and vignettes. Which customers love us and why, and which customers don't love us and why. And customer vignettes from spending tons of time with customers and users that hopefully all of you are doing, so that you can bring context to your teams. Limit developer interruptions. This one's not just, and it's actually not primarily on product managers, primarily on engineering managers, but it's about not interrupting individual contributors so that they can focus, and making sure that nobody else interrupts them either. So occasionally I run into a company that the developers are shanghaied. First time I ran into this was decades ago, long before remote teams came along, and literally developers were being shanghaied in the hallway and given things to do that I, the director of engineering, had no idea they were working on, and if they were so important that they should be shanghaied, should have come through. And these days should come through you. They should go onto your backlog. Developers should not be working on anything that's not on your backlog. So don't let anybody else block the noise. Don't let anybody else interrupt developers, and let them be productive. And be available yourselves. So those of us who have manager in our titles, and product managers and engineering managers and product owners don't have manager, but it essentially are one. Scrum masters are the same. We get interrupted. And we don't want to interrupt developers. We don't want to interrupt testers, but we for sure want them to interrupt us if they've got questions. And no matter how good we are at writing requirements, our ability to have totally unambiguous requirements is a fallacy. It's just not possible. Not in my experience, anyway. And then participate. So be part of. So if you're the team's product manager or product owner, be part of every daily stand-up, every sprint planning, every sprint review. Collaborate in solutioning, resolve ambiguities as they arise. These are the key points where you can identify whether developers truly understand the mission, truly understand the connection between what they're working on and the big picture, the impact that they can have. And then deliver praise and gratitude. Share customer delight, and appreciate the effort that delivered it. And then it goes both to the team and to the larger organization, the go-to-market organization, so that they understand the effort that went into that customer delight, and they understand the customer delight. And finally, that notion of happy teams. So I mentioned Rich Sheridan a few minutes ago. Rich Sheridan wrote a book called Joy Inc. INC. And if you haven't read it, I really highly recommend it. It's an easy, really fun read. Rich's book is about this, is the story of how they created a software development organization based on delivering joy. And so he makes this. So they're an outsourced. They're an onshore. They're in Ann Arbor, Michigan. They've got 70 developers, and they do work for all kinds of people, from the government to startups. And Rich makes the point to his customers that they have happy teams, and occasionally he hears from a customer who says, "Well, I don't care that you have happy teams." And Rich says, "Well, all I have to do is say, well, I've got a team that's really happy, and I've got a team that's not very happy. Which one do you want working on your stuff?" And darned if they don't all choose the happy team. We all know that happy teams are more productive, whether we're willing to admit it or not. So, two closing points. One, coming back to this, make your mission your mantra. Don't say it once. Say it, and find ways to say it over and over and over again. Be obsessed with communicating impact and purpose. And then secondly, give developers the opportunity to love and empathize with customers and users by actually connecting them with customers and users. So in case any of you are interested in following up with my book, there's a or the video training we made from our book, there's a discount code there that you may want to take a screenshot of, and I'll leave that up for a moment when we go to Q&A, and then I'll switch to a slide that's got my contact information on it. So let's do Q&A.
Okay, so if anyone has any questions, please unmute yourself and go ahead and ask.
I can throw one out there, Ron. I've seen some frustration in the product leader world of needing to always repeat themselves, and I understand the mission. You make the mission the mantra, right? Just repeat. What advice would you have for those that just find it a bit frustrating to repeat themselves, or don't think they should, or yeah?
I think you want to bring them around to so fine. It's been years and years since I delved into sales books, but when I did, and it was decades ago, probably before I even got into software, I was looking at, what's this sales stuff? How do people sell things? And 201, they're all, you do not make the point once. And those of us who are engineering managers and those of you who are product managers, we're selling stuff. We're selling mission. We're selling impact. We're selling delighting customers. And it's all about making that point over and over again so that we're successful, actually. Jen, does that help at all?
Absolutely. And I'm asking for the wider group. I'm totally sold on this, Ron. And I'm like shaking my head. I don't have my video on, but yeah, I've been shaking my head. And a good book, if anyone's interested in set like this idea of that we're always selling. I think it's Daniel Pink, To Sell is Human. I'll put it in the chat if anyone's interested. That's another sort of easy read.
And Daniel Pink's book Drive that he wrote
Oh,
before that one is also a really good read.
I haven't gotten to Drive myself yet. It's been on my list for many, many years, but
Yeah, Drive is really fun
cool. Thank you.
and insightful.
So Jen had also brought up a good point in the chat about software managers who think that developers should already know how what they do rolls up to the bigger picture. But my experience, and I'm sure yours as well, Ron, has been that they don't automatically know. They have to be often guided because they're dealing with the code, they're dealing with requirements, they're dealing with the agile process, they're dealing with so many things that are that their functions are affected by, that I have often found it useful to explain the bigger picture, right? Why are we doing this? What overall purpose does it provide to the customer? What benefits does it provide to the customer? So, and oftentimes that brings up discussions and questions from developers that are very, very productive. So that when they design, when they design features or they put a particular button in a particular place on a screen, even they're thinking about how it affects the customer and not just doing it because it's a nifty piece of engineering.
Yeah. So every once in a while, I run into an engineering manager who seems to have forgotten all of what he or she knew when they were a developer. That software development is not predictable, or that developers need that kind of understanding shared with them. So yeah, I'm fundamentally a nerd, and I can look back at my childhood and say, well, in the fourth grade, when I got a Rimco one transistor radio kit for my birthday, and spent the day building that kit instead of playing with friends, I definitely qualify as a nerd. And I think that there are so I can't explain engineering managers who forget that, but other people who are fundamentally not nerds have trouble understanding the nerdhood, and 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 nerdhood has to do with explaining the people part of playing with friends is good too. Um, what it takes to delight customers, and particularly in the kind of products that we're building where there are nuances about doing those kinds of things. One of the things that's incredibly enlightening, and was enlightening to me when I was at Apple, was we had user experience people who were bringing we were bringing people into user testing rooms that had the one-way mirror. And so we sat and watched through the one-way mirror, watched users speak out loud. They're always they're always given the instruction to, okay, so here's your challenge. Here's the screen. Your challenge is to do this. Now talk out loud as you figure out how to do that. And I think one of the truths in user experience is that where the things we think that users will find the most intuitive are sometimes the things that are least intuitive. And we actually have to watch users to understand where those things are and understand which things those are.
Okay, any more questions?
Any more in the chat? So I'm not following the chat.
Um,
No question.
Michael.
yeah, Michael, go ahead.
So who do you think is doing this well, Ron?
When I was there, Apple did this well. Can I say that Apple's doing it well now? No, I don't know. But when I was there, Apple did it well, and Apple did it well. And the reason I'm convinced of that was I walked into Apple. Apple's mission was we're going to change the world. And it later got modified. We're going to change the world through computers, and then it got modified again as they developed music machines and phone and iPods and iPads and phones and other things, watches. But the original mission, or the mission when I arrived in 1988, was we're going to change the world. And there was no one at Apple who in the parts of the organization I was in that didn't know that was the mission. And who and who were not just gung-ho for making that be true.
Kind of riffing off that, Ron, I know I was just happened to, this is a couple months ago, maybe a year ago. I'm lucky that I stumbled upon an event like this, but where Rich Sheridan was speaking. So I was able to hear him. And so Menlo Innovations, that's his company, they offer tours. So if anyone's in the Ann Arbor area, so yeah, they seem to be doing it well and offer tours. I haven't been on one. I haven't made my way there, but figured I'd.
Yeah, and again, I would suggest reading. Have you read Rich's book, Joy Inc., Jen?
No, that's another one. I did put that in the chat. It's on it's on the backlog.
Yeah. It's a good one, and it is an easy read, and it is enlightening in some of the practices. For example, all of software development built at Menlo Innovations, and Jen, you heard Rich talk, so you probably got this from his talk, but and he's probably got talks on YouTube too that you could join in, or Jen, if the event you were at had was recorded, and you caught up with that, it would be worth sharing. All software development is done through pair programming. There are two programmers, one screen, one keyboard.
That's right. Yeah, they do they're very methodical about that.
They're very methodical about it, and the way they hire, and I just love this, the way they hire. So that's their culture. So the way they hire for that culture is they bring in 50, however many, but Rich gives the example in his book. We bring in 50 programmers. We pair them. We put them into 25 pairs. And your job, and we give them something to do for, I don't know, an hour and a half or 2 hours. And your job is to make your pair look good. Your job is to make us want to hire not you, but your pair. And if you do that, that makes you hireable by us. And it's the culture that just totally supports the culture that they've got. AU.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
have a
hi.
raised hand. AU, could you identify yourself? And
Yes. Yeah, my name is Ashwin and I am from design. So my question is, how do we align PMs and development in terms of the priorities, especially on the harder things? Like PMs, of course, they have the business roadmap, and the development team has their own technical depth, and they're always burdened with a lot of stuff which they want to achieve. And from a design standpoint, especially in today's era where there is like the new interaction paradigms being introduced, like ambient intelligence, where there is a lot of foundational development work which is required. How do we convince and align, like, and motivate them to deliver this awesome user experiences?
Hmm. I've so there's a bunch of questions. There are a bunch of thoughts at least that come up to that question. I've done a number of consulting engagements with Rich Mironoff, who some of you may know, and who's probably spoken to this group. I think he was one of the founders of this group, actually. He was one of the founders of Product Camp. And if you're not reading Rich's blog, I read it every single post that he makes, and he makes a post once a month. He has made a post once a month for the last 12 years, 16 years, some awesome, no, awesome, so amazing, every single month. But he did one called Shoulder to Shoulder. So go to mironov.com is where he posts, mironov.com. And he's got a post called Shoulder to Shoulder that when I read it, it so resonated with me that I wished I'd written it from the engineering standpoint, because it's head of engineering, head of product being shoulder to shoulder. It's basically we should be paired in such a way that basically we sing from the same hymn book, and we metaphorically, and we can finish each other's sentences, and we work on those kinds of things. From AU, from an agile standpoint, the engineering team does have work that it has to do in addition to the product work, whether it's paying down technical debt or it's learning new technologies and new tools. And the engineering organization needs to create a parallel backlog to the product backlog. It's basically a technical backlog. That technical backlog then product leadership and engineering leadership needs to integrate those two backlogs so that the development team is working from a single backlog that is in part engineering stuff and in part product stuff. Now, if you go look at another one of Rich Mironoff's posts, one of his posts has the pie chart that indicates what percentage of time the development team should be spending on product stuff. I'm guessing, from what I remember, that it's about 55%, and it might be 30% on what engineering thinks, and there are some other parts there. Now, if you go to Marty Kagan, who wrote Inspired, and Inspired suggests that if as product managers, you don't take 20% of the time your teams are going to work and just give it to engineering to do with what they need to do, you're probably marching toward technical bankruptcy. not his words, but that's the essence. That's the essence of it. I parachuted into an organization that was in ed tech, and their board of directors were entirely educators. They had no idea how software was built. And no one from the board of directors to the CEO to the product management team to the engineering management was able to get engineering any time for paying down technical debt. And they were really close to technical bankruptcy. And they were at a point where 20% was not going to be anywhere near enough. They probably needed to spend 50% paying down technical debt until they got it down far enough that they could, on an ongoing basis, take just 20%. So those are some thoughts.
Yep. No, thank you. I'll check out Mirano's blog, which you're mentioning. Thank you.
So Liz asked a question on chat. What's one small thing that a product leader can start doing right away to inspire their team to focus on delighting customers? One easy thing.
Make your mission a mantra. It's doing it. I mean, literally, it's doing it over and over again. So actually that and taking developers along, if it's round robining them or giving them the opportunity to actually see users using our stuff. Because those two things together, I think, are so important for motivating the team. It's just so amazing to see users being delighted or users being frustrated. And oh, we created the greatest stuff in the world, and then you go look at users being frustrated with that stuff, and you say, oh, we need to fix that.
Yep. Okay. Any more questions?
Hi, this is Manu. Can you hear me?
Manu,
Yes.
Go ahead.
Ron, wonderful session and really amazing the years of experience you have in so many areas. My question is a little bit moving in the current paradigm with so much around AI and using it as your friend and sounding board. Given like all these aspects you are bringing up of like shoulder to shoulder and working together, what's your take on this? And you have led technology at the leaders of technology, I will say. So would be very interesting to hear your perspective.
Yeah, my concern actually. So I've got a couple of concerns. One of them is that sorry, my screen just shifted, so I'm only looking at me instead of all of you. Let me see if I can get that back. There we go. Now I've got the gallery again. At least I've got 3 other people I can look at. All of you want to turn your cameras on. That's useful. So one of the things that concerns me about AI is that it hallucinates, and it generates technical debt at a higher rate than most programmers do, and pairing AI with a senior developer, I think makes senior developers way more productive. I think there's a ton of data about that, and a ton of anecdotal stuff that I've heard, read, talked to over and over again. It makes senior developers more productive. It makes junior developers more productive too, but junior developers don't know how to identify hallucinations yet. They don't know how to identify technical debt on the fly as senior developers do. And so one of the things that I see happening is, oh, well, let's have fewer junior developers. We'll just have senior developers working with AI. well, where do senior developers come from? They come from junior developers. And if we don't hire junior developers, I think that's a huge problem. It's a problem not today, but it's a problem down the line, that we're going to have a serious problem. And then fundamentally, I think that our people in process. So I saw somebody's and I reposted somebody's blog post that was pointing this out, that the whole AI thing is like, oh, single focus, like blinders, single focus on the technology, and the technology is changing so fast, it's understandable. It's like, which tool should we be using? Which AI technology should we be using? What does it do? I mean, it changes daily, and the result is there's this single focus on the technology and the tools, and the technology and the tools don't create great software. People do, and I think that's another one of the missing things right now in a lot of organizations, is that connecting the people and is honoring and supporting and nurturing the people and process that make this stuff, and leveraging those AI tools, yes, but not losing touch with the people and process sides, which I think has happened over the last 2 years. So does that?
Thank you. Yes.
Okay. Any more questions for Ron?
Hey, Ron, wanted to ask a follow-up question. So you talked about, gave Apple as an example of somebody doing this well. Have you or anybody done any studies about these things that you've identified that companies can do to improve the experience, in terms of just trying to see, who's doing what, like how pervasive these different practices are in different organizations?
Michael, it's funny you should ask that question. So I don't have a great, yeah, I can point at this and this and this. It occurs to me to as Jen said, let's point at Menlo Innovations for doing a great job of this stuff, because I think they do. And going and reading Rich's book is worthy. But there was a time. So I ran into Agile in 1999. I was at Charles Schwab. At the time, we measured downtime at Schwab in millions of dollars per minute. And I was leading an initiative to move all of Schwab to a single technology. So up until that time, every project team could pick its own. So we had Microsoft, we had Java, and we had C++, and we had I don't think we had any Spitball, but boy, we had almost everything else. And our CIO said, maybe we should have a single thing. Maybe our data center folks were like, yes, let's have a single thing to support. And so I was leading this initiative, and one of the VPs I was supporting, I was still a director of engineering, one of the VPs I was supporting with this initiative was doing something called extreme programming. The word Agile hadn't even been coined yet. It wasn't coined until 2001. This was 1999. And one of the VPs was using extreme programming, and I thought, wait, millions of dollars per minute for downtime, extreme anything. I better find out what this is. And it turned out that the guy who wrote that was Kent Beck, and I had met Kent when I was at Apple. He had briefly tried to make our personal computers use Smalltalk. in the 1980s before they were in any way powerful enough to be able to do Smalltalk. But I met Cat and I called him and brought him down to do some brown bags for extreme programming. And then I didn't run into Scrum until 2002, also at Schwab, and found it really intriguing for the productivity that it promised. And then so I then was leading teams doing Agile and supporting teams and nurturing teams doing Agile. And in the middle of the aughts, I thought, okay, so Agile hasn't hit critical mass yet, but I'll bet it will. And I think about 2009, 2010, Agile hit critical mass in the sense that you could. So I've got a friend who evaluates software organizations for private equity firms. And he's got a whole questionnaire that he walks in with, and one of the questions used to be, "Are you agile?" And about 2009 or 2010, he realized he couldn't use that question anymore because everyone said yes. Everyone was agile. But then he had to develop a whole series of questions that were about, well, are they really agile or are they just saying they're agile? Are they just doing are they doing Scrum, but we don't have, we don't have daily stand-ups, or Scrum, but we don't do retrospectives, or, I've now got a list of about 32 different ways of describing agile organizations that aren't actually agile. And I think the same thing is true relative to, the same thing is true relative to leaders saying, yeah, our organization totally understands our mission, and they totally understand the vision and the mission behind the product we're building, and they totally understand how what they're working is going to make an impact. And there are a few that do that well, and as I said, Apple did, and I think Menlo Innovations does, but to answer your question, I haven't seen a list, and I haven't tried to come up with a list because it's beyond my beyond what I can do.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I'm just thinking about trying to draw the connection between an organization's mission and user experience or delighting customers. Just thinking personally, for experiences I have, whether they're good or bad, the number of companies that create those experiences that I could identify what their mission is pretty much zero. Like, I don't know. And usually, if the employees don't know, you can imagine their users don't know, right? And may not care, right? It's just a question of, am I happy? Does this product make me happy or even delight me or not? So I see the value of the focus on that and getting your teams aligned around that. And at the same time, I feel like there needs to be a connection, or people need to look at, is there a correlation, right, between whatever you've chosen and whether you're truly delighting your customers?
Yeah, again, I don't know currently, but I suspect Dropbox at one point was really good at this, because Dropbox was like, oh, that's how it's supposed to work. One of those user experiences that you say, oh, yeah, that's cool. Just sort of works intuitively. What are the experiences you have that, oh, it just works intuitively? I suspect that understanding of mission is there.
Okay. Any more questions? All right. Well, Ron, I wanted to, on behalf of SVPMA, thank you very much for the insightful and illuminating talk. And your extensive experience and expertise certainly shows through in what you're saying. And I think that I'm getting some agreement from some of the attendees as well. Thank you very much. One last thing, Ron mentioned product camp. So I just wanted to put in a quick word. We are planning to restart product camp. For those of you who have either attended before or have heard of it, it's one of our most popular programs. And we have in the past gotten between 500 to 700 people to attend the one-day conference. And we are trying to find a venue, and it will be sometime in 2026. But we'll keep you all updated on the plans. We'll put them on our website. We'll also send out email about it and other social media posts. So look out for that. It promises to be a blockbuster event.
If you haven't been to a product camp, it's awesome.
Yeah. Thanks for the endorsement. And I know, Ron, that you have spoken at product camp as well.
I have, and I've attended, and they're just wonderful.
Yeah. Thanks. Okay, well, thanks, Ron, and thank you all for attending. I hope you enjoyed the program, and please attend our future programs as well. Thanks and good night.